That goes on the records.
But I don't agree with you. We'll expect a garden minister.
It's 7 o'clock, Sharon.
Well,
And Mark is just here from PCC.
okay, good evening, everybody. The meeting's about to start. I'd just like to read a few items out. Could any members or officers in physical attendance with electronic device mute it to avoid feedback? Could remote participants keep their camera and microphone off unless they wish to speak, as this can affect the quality of the meeting? This meeting is being live webcast and recording stays on the council's website. I would like to welcome everyone to this evening's hybrid Western Area Committee, including anyone attending remotely. The following officers, following Swale Borough Council officers are in attendance. Head of Environment and Leisure, Martin Cassell on my left, and Policy and Engagement Officer, Janet Dart on my right. Kent County Council officers for the area in attendance are Councillor Mike Baldock, and unfortunately Councillor Rich Lehman sends his apologies, he cannot attend. I would also like to welcome Mark Welsh, Principal Transport Planner for KCC, who is attending remotely and will be talking to us later. Do we have any parish councillors in attendance, either in person or remotely? Could you please introduce yourselves?
Ross Richardson, Vice Chair, Government Council.
Councillor Nicola Butley in Borden.
We've got the clerk from Bobbin as well.
Right. Would members of the public like to introduce themselves? We've got any members of the public here that like to say?
Well, I'm Bruce Elvin.
I'm Gabriella Sillers.
Good evening, thank you very much.
And you are? Sorry, I missed your name at the beginning.
Councillor Paul Stevens. Yeah.
This gentleman is visually impaired.
Oh, sorry.
To actually introduce yourself would be useful.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item, hang on, yeah. Sorry, if anyone would like to speak at any time, please raise your hand and I will invite you to speak. Likewise, could anyone attending remotely, please mute their microphone until they speak and indicate on the instant messenger if you wish to speak.
I note the hand raised behind you.
Right. Yes, Councillor Butlin, you've still got your hand raised from earlier.
Sorry, but this end it says it's not raised.
Okay. Well, if you want to speak, just put your microphone on and jump in.
Sorry.
Councillor Baldock.
It may be useful for people if we introduce ourselves.
We will get to that. Yes, definitely. I just want to go through the emergency procedures first. Should that happen before we introduce ourselves, okay? Agenda item 1, emergency evacuation procedure. Please be aware of the evacuation procedures to follow in the event of an emergency. There is no scheduled test of the fire alarm during this meeting. If the alarm does sound, please leave the building quickly without collecting any of your possessions using the doors signed as fire escapes, and assemble outside where directed. Wait instructions before re-entering the building. Should anyone require assistance in evacuating the building, please make the Swale Borough officers aware of any special needs so that suitable arrangements may be made in the event of an emergency. Anyone? Right, okay. Item 2, apologies for absence.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Anne Kavanagh, although she is online. Councillor Lloyd Chapman and Councillor Roger Clark.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, any declarations of interest? Right, okay. Before we go on to the next one, yes, we will do an introduction. If councillors, I mean, I think I will start. I'm Councillor Paul Stephen, chair of this meeting, and you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, Martin Cassell, I'm the head of environment and leisure, so I look after a number of the services on being discussed tonight for the council.
Councillor Sarah Stephen, Woodstock Ward, so Paul and I are Woodstock houses, so that's Tunstall Urban and Eden Village and around that area.
I'm Councillor Chris Palmer and I'm a representative for Newton, Hartlepool and Upchurch Ward.
I'm Councillor Richard Palmer and I represent Hartlepool, Newton and Upchurch Ward, and I'm also a parish councillor with Newington Parish Council. Thank you.
Councillor James Hunt, a member for the Meads, which is North Fields, Quinton, Archers Park and Amberfields. Councillor Mike Baldock, represent councillor for Borden and Grove Park, and on Kent County Council I'm the member for Swale West.
Hello, evening. My name's Monique Bonney. I'm councillor for West Downs, which is Batchild, Robertsham, Milstead. Okay. And I'm also a Robertsham Parish Councillor.
And I'm Janet Dart. I'm the Policy and Engagement Officer, and I do the arrangements for these meetings.
Thank you. Anyone else want to introduce themselves? Parish councillors that are here? Right, good. Okay, agenda item 4, minutes. Do members agree the minutes of the meetings held on 15th of February 2024, minute numbers 636 and to 646, and also 15th of May 2024, minute numbers 39 to 40 as correct records? Agreed. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5 is the Kent Local Transport Plan 5. And I would like to introduce Mark Welsh, the Principal Transport Planner at KCC, who will give a presentation on the Kent Local Transport Plan 5.
Thank you, Councillor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Yeah, brilliant. Also, just to let you know, Anne's hand that was raised, you can right click and lower the hand. So if it gets stuck again, someone else could take the liberty to do that. In the meantime, I will share the slides that I need to present. So thank you for hosting me. I'm just going to go full screen of the slides in a second. There we go. Is that okay? Can you see those?
No, you're fine. You're free.
Excellent. Right. So thank you for hosting me. Yeah, I'm Mark Welch. I work at Kent County Council in Highways and Transport, and Councillor Mike Whiting on Kent County Council has arranged for ourselves to brief all of the Swale area committees. So it's an excellent opportunity to expand the awareness of the council's consultation. And I'm just going to run through what this consultation is about and what is specifically within the consultation, and then what the council will need to do to bring the process of its local transport plan to completion. I think we'll have time, as we did at the Eastern Area Committee earlier this week, for any feedback and questions. So this plan, this local transport plan, it's a statutory requirement of Kent County Council, which means it's a requirement set out in legislation. It's not identical or as onerous as something like a local planning authority local development plan that I'm sure many of you will be familiar with as a district authority. But it does have some similar requirements in terms of we have to do a degree of statutory consultation, which is this at the moment. We also have to do some specific assessments as well, supporting assessments around sustainability and environmental impacts. And fundamentally, the purpose of the local transport plan, and every local transport authority in the country, in England, has to have one of these. We've been asked by the Department for Transport to bring ours up to date and refresh it. Again, that's the same as all other local transport authorities. There's been a glut of this activity going on over the last couple of years across the nation. But fundamentally, it's a plan that needs to set out where and by when and why the council wants to bring about improvements to the transport mix. And it is an everything plan as well. So it covers all the parts of the transport mix, not just those elements that KCC as a local transport and highways authority is responsible for, but also parts of the network that we're not responsible for, but which have, of course, a bearing and an impact on how people travel. So, of course, you know, the motorway and trunk road network, the rail network, and so on are covered in the plan. And this is a fifth plan. So Kent County Council has been one of the better authorities, keeping its plans up to date and contemporary. And this fifth plan aims to cover broadly a period into the late 2030s. And that's really driven by the sort of broad position of the 12 district authorities and their local plans that, of course, detail the growth proposals. And most of those local plans go into that horizon. And it's called Striking the Balance because the council has developed this plan and feels that there's an important balance to be recognised between the need for making sure that the current network receives investment that it needs, as much as improving and providing new elements of the network as well. And that's a degree of difference compared to the last local plan, and is reflective really of the financial situation that the council has been in for some time. If it's adopted, this plan will replace the existing current plan called Local Transport Plan 4. And that was adopted back in 2017, I think, but written in 2016. The council developed an ambition. It's a comprehensive ambition. It really covers all of the bases, and therefore again reflects a degree of the balance that the council wants to achieve across health, well-being, economy, and the different parts of the transport mix. And this is set out in the local transport plan up front, and coming off the back of it then, and because it's an everything plan, there are a series of outcomes that the council set out it wants to achieve, and those are quite diverse in nature because it's an everything plan. So on the one hand, the plan sets out the outcome that it wants to achieve in respect of, you know, very local transport, walking and cycling. But just as the last plan has done, it also touches on some of the really, much more national and strategic elements of transport that impact the county, be it aspects around international rail, international haulage traffic through the port of Dover and Folkestone, or be it aviation, for example, and growth proposals at airports and how those may affect the county. So a kind of broad series of outcomes as well. So within the local transport plan, those things are set out, and those were set out last year as well. We ran a non-statutory initial consultation last year on what was called the Emerging Local Transport Plan. That consultation gave people an opportunity to comment on those, the ambition, the outcomes, and specific objectives around those outcomes. And those are still available for people to comment on. But what we're also providing people the opportunity to comment on now is the work that's taken place since concerning specific proposals for really the what and where specifically within Kent. So developing the spatial plan element of how the transport network could change. The key messages in the KCC local transport plan. As I've mentioned, it's called striking a balance, and that's because of this need to strike a balance across the transport mix and also across the pressing issues of today compared to the long term. And what that has meant is in this local transport plan, the kind of foundation of maintaining our road network is at the forefront of the plan, and also the need for getting further sustained and sufficient funding for the bus network too. As many people will be aware, and KCC is not alone in this challenge, but it has been particularly vocal about the challenge and the need for more government funding, is there has been a growing backlog of highways maintenance work. And that's been driven by, obviously changes in use of the network, some of the pressures on the network, some of the environmental changes, more extreme weather events. It's also been driven by a lack of funding into the network. And then, of course, in the bus network, as many people will be familiar, there has been particularly the impact through the pandemic, and unfortunately a series of scaling back of bus network within Kent, again, similar to other parts of the country. And what Kent County Council has managed to do is start getting new funding into the bus network through something called the National Bus Strategy. And KCC has a very comprehensive, detailed bus service improvement plan on its website. It's not duplicated in the local transport plan, but of course it's reiterated and referred to. And that really sets out the need for, again, sustained sufficient funding. I think at the moment, the funding that we have from government, I think it comes to an end in 2025. And as it stands, and, conscious that it's probably going to stand like this for a little while longer, given the political change nationally. But as it stands, we don't know where further funding and funding support will come from, and for how long it will last. And that's a real challenge for the council and many others, and is something that the plan is upfront about the need to fix. And then just broadly, funding that's needed for the local transport plan proposals, it is substantial. We're looking over the course of this plan in terms of the proposals that we've got and that KCC itself would need to deliver. There are individual specific proposals in the plan, that some that are many tens of millions, some which would be hundreds of millions. They will need to be funded. We cannot fund them out of the existing KCC budget. And so the message in the local transport plan is clear. The council has made clear that it needs that further funding to come from the government. And part of the reason that the Department for Transport asked all local transport authorities to refresh and update their plans is so that they can get an understanding of, ahead of the next comprehensive spending review, is to get an understanding of what the local transport authority requirements are on funding. Now, of course, we know, no prizes for guessing, we know we're not going to get the funding that we ask for. I'm not sure we ever do. But what it will really tell government is just the scale of funding that is needed. And of course, that will then feed through to government decision making and policy making about how the transport system is funded and reformed going forwards, further to what's already been announced. So we do get a lot of questions about, well, if you haven't got any money, why are you setting out what you'd like to do? And this is really the reason. We've been asked to do this. It's important that we understand what the scale of that financial challenge would be. It's only if we know what we want to do and how much it would broadly cost that we can then start to get to the nitty-gritty of trying to work out, as a public sector as a whole, how these things are funded and delivered. Within the plan itself, there are specific proposals, as I mentioned. There are proposals that are covered at a county-wide level for the strategic road network, for the local road network. So this is the KCC managed road network. The slide before is the National Highways managed road network. For the public transport and shared transport networks, this covers rail and other aspects such as shared mobility. and also for the cycling and the walking network, which have been developed through a separate tranche of work that was commissioned for the local transport plan called the Kent Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan, or the KCWIP for short. And KCC consulted on that following our emerging transport plan consultation last year, and has been considering the consultation outcomes and is looking to finalising that plan ahead of us finalising the transport plan as a whole. So those are sort of county-wide proposals, or proposals that particularly go across district boundaries. And then within the local transport plan, there's a reiteration of those that are relevant to each specific district. So this is the Swale district proposals map. And on it, it sets out those network-wide proposals in the red, and then it also touches on some of the local proposals. So there's a range of aspects on here associated with the walking and cycling networks, and specifically coming off of KCC's own plan and how that supplements in particular the local cycling walking plan that Swale Council has developed. And it also touches on some of the smaller scale proposals that are nonetheless significant, but that would be having an impact sort of especially within Swale itself. And fundamentally, one of the important things to understand, if you get the opportunity to look at the local transport plan, is for our proposals, we have tried to set out what needs to happen next. And that's so that people understand really the maturity of some of the schemes. Some are more mature than others. Some are closer to construction than others. Some are, relatively immature. The next steps that they would need to take wouldn't be delivery and construction, but would rather be the process of planning and developing and designing those proposals. But those activities within themselves are substantial activities, they're costly activities, and within the constraints of the existing budget that KCC has and will probably have going forwards, we don't really have sufficient funding to do much of that work either. So a lot of what is in the plan will be contingent on getting further funding from government, and however government deems to find it, should it actually deem to do so at all. Fingers crossed it does. So when is the consultation taking place? Well, it launched in July. We've had a series of drop-in sessions. The good thing with these area committees and this further engagement within Swale itself is they're happening ahead of our specific Swale drop-in sessions. So you can see there on the 10th of September, we are at Sheppey Gateway in Sheerness from 10 till 2. And on the 24th of September, we are at Sittingbourne Library between 12 and 4 in the afternoon. You can also find all of the information. So we have all the information about the plan and the supporting assessments at these drop-in sessions. You can also speak to staff and ask questions about the plan or feedback there. You can also find out, of course, this information on the Kent website. I would just also like to flag, firstly, as it says there, that a briefing note has been provided to all the to the JTB chair for distribution to JTB members at Swale, and also for noting in any in-session JTB that takes place during the consultation period. And we have attended some JTBs to speak to the paper where that's been requested. I would also just like to point out, because I think I caught just when I was logging on, that there are some members of parish councils in the room. Just to make you aware that we contacted all clerks of parish and town councils as well, and provided to them the details of this consultation. And I think also the consultation poster, if it can be erected in parish and village halls, that's helpful for us too. And of course, if anyone wants to understand more, ask questions, you absolutely can do. And the easiest way is to do that via email nowadays. We monitor all the emails that come in. We respond to all of those that ask for a response. you can make a request for paper copies of the consultation materials or plan on email, but there's also on the website, there's also set out the phone number and postal address as well for those that wish to do it that way. And so just wrapping up, so when will the local transport plan be completed? Well, it's contingent, of course, on what comes back through the consultation and what decisions the cabinet member at KCC with the input from a member group at Kent County Council that's been working on the local transport plan for the last couple of years, supporting the cabinet member, what they consider as any necessary changes to the plan based on the consultation feedbacks, whether anything needs to come out of the plan or whether anything needs to be added. And then the cabinet member will resolve whether to take the local transport plan towards county council. And within KCC's constitution, the local transport plan requires a full vote of the county council to be adopted. There's currently a planned December meeting of the county council, which at the moment it's penciled in on the agenda for. We'll see whether that meeting changes in terms of its date, but that's the routing beyond the close of the consultation. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate you providing the time and opportunity at your area committee. I'll stop sharing so we can all see each other for any follow-up Q&A feedback.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Mark? Yes, Councillor Bonnet.
Yeah, so if you could switch back to the proposals map for Swale.
Yeah, bear with me. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes.
Good. Let's go back. There we go, reverse.
So can I just ask where the ideas for those comments in those boxes came from?
Which specific boxes? All of them?
Yeah, but there's one, the bottom left,
It's the one on.
which says Sittingbourne town traffic congestion relief, including potential new highway routes between the A2 and the M2. Can you tell me where you got that from?
Yes, so of course we're aware that there are developer proposals that have set out plans for a movement corridor as part of a potential relief road. Obviously part of the Northern Relief Road has been delivered in the past. At the same time, there's also potentially other options that could be considered for reducing congestion within Sittingbourne. And so what we've written into the plan, and it's similar to Maidstone as a town itself as well, is we've acknowledged the existing options that have been identified in the past and which remain under consideration either by KCC or as part of third-party proposals, but also acknowledged that they are potential and there are other options that will need to be considered. If KCC were to do any specific work itself, so got the funding to develop proposals for addressing Sittingbourne congestion, it was sort of suffice it to say that the scale of potential interventions, and this goes for Maidstone as well, the scale of any interventions would likely require government funding, and therefore to make any bid for and unlock any government funding, we would need to consider all of the options, and therefore there are currently options such as the relief road options, but there are other options as well. So you'd have to go through a sort of full and sufficient process on optioneering.
Okay, so I'll give you some feedback on that because you clearly haven't come and spoken to the local authority. But there has been some very clear work done by Network Rail around the bridges in Sittingbourne, which are the entrance and exit to the Eurolink. So just where Swale House is, you'll know where that is, that junction there causes absolute mayhem for the rest of town when it all backs up and you can't get round the roundabout near Eurolink or around the retail park. Now, Network Rail have clearly, when I pointed out to them that their infrastructure where the road pinches, if that was widened and that was a proper 2 or 4 lane carriageway to get along there, would relieve an awful lot of congestion around the rest of the area. They recognise that, and they've now embedded that in their long-term plan. And I don't understand why there's no reference to that in this plan. I also don't understand why there's no reference in this to freight rail. Now, this has been discussed at length with Roger Goff many times over for the last 4 years in KMEP, the Kent and Medway Economic Partnership, where it is recognised that the ports in Kent cause a considerable amount of wear and damage to our highway networks, the amount of freight that comes through Kent. In particular, we've got in our area, Swale, we've got Sheerness and we've got Riddham, and they go through relatively rural areas as well. And I don't understand why that's not being picked up. So there are some fairly strategic things, because you're talking to a forum here, which is mainly rural communities. And what we've had is the decimation of our bus services. So I now represent an area where my villages, bar one, have no bus service whatsoever. And the remaining one, which is Batchild, has 25% of its former bus services. So it's gone from 4 an hour to 1 an hour. So I think, I don't know what you're trying to achieve with this, which sounds to me like funding, but it's not even going to get us back on an even keel. And actually, if you're trying to relieve congestion in the town centre, trying to allow villages to get into our town centre would be a really good option. And I don't think building new roads is going to be the solution there. Just a little bit of feedback.
Thank you. Just to assure you, I was part of the Network Rail sessions that were run on the North and East Kent rail corridor. So I recall you feeding back. I remember the discussions we had collectively on the bridges. And I think, to reassure you, if Kent County Council were in a position where we could do a proper full assessment of all the options for how you address Sittingbourne congestion, we absolutely would draw in that potential opportunity of those bridges, and whether I could work with Network Rail to address the bridge abutments in order to widen them, as you say, along the lines of increasing road capacity in and out to and from the Eurolink industrial estate. On the rail freight aspect as well, so I cover rail at KCC as well. So I have heard yourself refer to rail KMEP, I think, for example, over the last couple of months. We have covered rail freight in the local transport plan, and we're specifically focused on the substantial opportunity that's been identified by Network Rail and the rail freight companies for unlocking rail freight through the Channel Tunnel, through Kent, around London, using the existing West London line, and parving up to the Midlands, and particularly the distribution manufacturing hubs. At the moment, they generate, a significant proportion of the road traffic that comes down and obviously snarls up at Port of Dover. What currently happens in terms of rail freight is that we don't get much. In fact, we get no rail freight through Channel Tunnel and then through Kent on the domestic rail network. And that's because fundamentally the containerised loads that could go on the back of wagons don't fit at the moment through what were Victorian tunnels. What would need to happen to those tunnels is effectively either the tunnels are notched and the lining modified so that the kinematic envelope of containerised loads can fit through a tunnel without hitting the tunnel lining, or, and what I understand is probably more likely in the interim because it's a lower cost solution, is for specialised rail wagons to be procured that sit lower to the track bed and therefore bring containerised loads away from the tunnel lining, meaning, again, there's less risk that they strike the tunnel. Now, those
Can I interrupt
Yeah.
specifically on that point? Because I have had a very long conversation with Network Rail and the operators of those freight services. That does not need to be done. I think you need to go back, and I've had this conversation at KMET probably more than 2 months ago. In fact, it's about a year ago. And they will tell you that those lower bridge ones you can still use. They're different containers. They're not the double stack you get from Europe, but there are the ability to run services, and very good services that would suffice without having to rebuild infrastructure. So I think this palm off, I've heard this now 3 times, and I get cross because it's excuses not to explore it properly and to do nothing on a joint basis. I would like to see this go forward more clearly, where there is solutions. They know there's solutions. There is a commercial solution.
Yeah, just to be clear, I am referring specifically to international rail freight that could use the Channel Tunnel. I think you're
I'm
right.
talking about Rhythm and Sheerness.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to come to it. I think the issue there is that, as far as I understand, there isn't a significant need for investment from the public sector. What I understand is there needs to be a market-led proposal from the rail freight operators to bring back into use the rail sidings. Obviously, it's then therefore a commercial decision for them whether the investment of bringing those sidings back into use and then utilising freight pathing across the rail network stacks up based upon the business, and the income they would get from effectively carrying customers' loads. So it's not, as I suppose, directly something that KCC itself can have a significant influence over, whereas the international rail freight aspect is something that we can have more input and effect on developing the case of, and particularly lobbying and seeking government to fund in the first instance the lower cost, although less perfect option, and then hopefully in the fullness of time the more substantial and more beneficial, fuller sort of engineering solution, which potentially could shift, as I say, hundreds if not thousands of HGVs onto the rail network and away from Dover and Folkestone, with the consequences of Brock, Tap and so on. So there are different challenges depending on the bit of the network.
That is the point for us as the rural communities, is that we suffer when Brock is on. Our villages are used as rat runs because of the problems around Brenley roundabout. Every summer, it's appalling. It's a consequence that has the consequence to the rural businesses who have, in some instances, found they're gridlocked. You can't get out. You can't get customers to you. And so whilst you blithely say, oh, it's not really our problem, it should be a private sector thing. No, it is a problem on our highway network. So until you encourage that and embed it in your plan and show government that it is part of the critical infrastructure to improve the flow on our roads, it's really important, because it will enable those ports or landowners to try and access some sort of seed capital to get that project off the ground. And it's a bit like that with the buses. I don't see in that plan how you're going to improve the rural bus network. But how those LC whips, that's great for walking and cycling, but I'll give you a specific instance for Rodmersham, right? We're on a cut through. People come through from the A2 and try to get to the A249. We've got a village school with about 120 pupils, 130 pupils, and a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Now, the school has said we'd like 20 miles an hour. We as a village have said we'd love 20 miles an hour. We've gone back to KCC and said in our highway improvement plan, we would like 20 miles an hour. You've done your speed survey and said it's not self-enforcing because it's 26, right? So it's just over the threshold. So one of your departments, which is education, is saying we want 20 miles an hour. Your highways department are telling us, no, we can't, it's not self-enforcing because of a marginal increase. And yet you're asking us to walk and cycle along lanes, which is inherently dangerous. Yeah. And people from the village are driving their kids to school because they don't feel safe walking along the road. So at which point in that equation is KCC going to break that cycle using this plan? Where is the bus service? Where is the speed limit that will allow people to safely walk along those lanes?
Yeah,
How are you
so
going to do that?
in terms of the bus service, there's not a lot of detail about the bus service in the local transport plan itself because there's already a substantial comprehensive plan called the Bus Service Improvement Plan that KCC, initially established and got £35 million of government funding for. And then recently, I think if you look back at March Transport Cabinet papers at KCC, they've set out a further extension of that plan. The government asked KCC and other authorities to set out what it would want to do further over the 2025 to 2028 period. And so there's a kind of detailed programme in effect of further investments and changes that KCC would seek to do. Whether that gets funded or not by the government, we don't know. As I say, at the moment, we have a cliff edge on bus funding, which it stops at the end, I think, of this financial year. So March 2025, what happens in April, we do not yet know, and we're waiting to see what government resolves to do on bus funding. In respect of 20 mile per hour zones, all I can say is KCC has a clear policy, I think, set out on 20 mile per hour zones and how it goes about considering those. And it sounds like you're going about the right way using the HIP process, as I think KCC prescribes.
One thing,
One last question.
one little one. So we've got Kent Science Park around the corner here, which falls in our rural area, and clearly there's no sustainable transport because what happens was there was a commercial bus service. They brought in a pilot to so-called improve the public transport. That pilot money ran out. The commercial bus service was demolished. We ended up with no bus service. There was some Section 106 money, and I asked whether that money could be used for the local bus service, and to run it at times that could be used. So instead of 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which is no good to man or beast, could it run at 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 or 6 in the afternoon, and use some of that Section 106 money to effectively make it a more usable service? And I was point blank told no. They wouldn't allow that service to be tinkered with, so they put an extension on Sittingbourne service, urban service. And you've now cut, or KCC has now cut the subsidised service, so we now have nothing. I don't believe for 1 minute using this plan that you would use any money to try and enable a subsidised service to become a commercial service. You've clearly demonstrated in your history of dealing with the communities that that is not your aim. How would this plan solve that?
I can't speak to what detailed decisions would be made by the council in the future about what services it does seek to support and which it doesn't. That isn't addressed in the plan. I can't preempt what the council would seek to do.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On a high level, I see that yet again the focus is on the M20, A20 corridor and the A2, M2 corridors, basically getting people into London as quickly as possible and people from the coast into London as quickly as possible. Nothing to improve north-south connections, nothing to enable the pressure to be taken off of, or enable people to actually travel around the county. From here, getting into Maidstone is a big thing because people want to work in Maidstone, there are jobs there. There's nothing about improving that. On a Swale level, you've got your LC whips, but there's nothing that seems to be there to address the rat running and congestion in the villages, which has increased because of the decline of buses. Equally, you talk about congestion in Sittingbourne, yet we've got to, as a council, we've got to provide another 11,000 houses in our local plan, but we don't get the support from KCC to say there isn't a traffic infrastructure that can be put in place to make that sustainable. So all we're going to do is have to deliver this unsustainable housing and increase the snarl up and the gridlock. So why isn't KCC backing us to say that 11,000 isn't sustainable unless there is major government funding to enable us to actually do that? They've just spent money on the Stockbury roundabout. The life of that expires in 2038 on existing allocation. What is KCC and what is this transport plan going to say about the amount of housing that is being put upon us in Swales? The other question that comes with that is when you have this development, you get all the snarl ups on the road. You have utilities digging up to put their new pipelines in and coming back 5 or 6 times because they don't get it right. We have the A2 is constantly being dug up, mainly to facilitate developers. Do you take that into account when you're talking? I'm glad you don't call this this one isn't called growth without gridlock, because that wasn't a very good title. Where is it in this plan? KCC have the power over what goes on their roads. But what are you doing about utilities that repeatedly take the mick? But say, oh, this is an emergency. And you can't blame them because they can't be bothered to get a timed intervention. So they just say, oh, it's an emergency. But they've been caught out so many times. What are we doing to actually say over the next 15 years, or for the life of this plan, we're going to actually tackle these causes of congestion. We're going to tackle developers and utility companies that cause the congestion. Because you're not going to get rid of congestion with another 11,000 houses to be built.
I don't know if you want to come back to
I was only going to say that on aspects around local plan development, KCC goes for a process and works at an officer level, supporting districts with the assessment using Kent's tool set, such as the transport model. In terms of housing, I think Kent County Council's corporate strategy Framing Kent's Future has a statement that says it thinks that the burden of housing should be more equally spread away from the southeast and across other parts of the country. But I can't really speak much more into some of the detail of what you've raised, because I think they come back to decisions that the council itself, the members, are responsible for taking going forwards. On something like utilities, for example, I think earlier this year, I think the Swale JTB received a briefing on the approach to managing utilities and the way in which permits are issued for street works and so on. So covered effectively the legislative arrangements, what KCC's powers are, and so on. There's not much more I can say on some of those aspects.
It probably goes along the same vein, because whatever happens, as soon as you improve that, as soon as they have a development, the Section 106 goes to highways. But if you want to really get rid of gridlock, you need a better infrastructure for public transport and cycleways. People aren't going to get onto bikes and ride about.
Yeah.
A lot do, but a lot more would do for their local journeys if it was a lot safer on the roads. And the same with gridlock. If the public transport system was better and improved, you could probably save far more money because as soon as you improve a road, you increase more traffic and it leads to more problems. So it's not, to me, it's not a joined up transport policy, because you already said, well, the bus policy is over there, but it doesn't match what you're trying to achieve. The railway, Ebbsfleet International, Ashford International, they don't run out into Europe. So it's not a joined up system. You can't say it's a broad brush approach and we're looking at what you're looking at really is highways, where you want to put more highways, And the only way you're gonna get more highways is either government money, which is in short supply, KCC money, which is even shorter in supply, or contributions from developers. And even to say, well, we can't do anything about the 20-mile-an-hour limit, there's a policy. Well, perhaps the feedback should be that policy should be re-looked at and revisited. Because if the policy is introduced by members, then members, if they've got the will, can always change a policy.
Yeah, just on on aspects about public transport, there is more detail within the local transport plan. I haven't been able to cover all of the detail that's in the local transport plan. There's a lot there. So I do encourage people, if they get the opportunity, to have a look at the full plan, look at the supporting evidence as well. It does detail, specifics around specific services, for example, on the rail network across Kent, in terms of where we think there should be upping of frequencies, for example. So there is some detail in there. And as I say, and then, there is separately the bus service improvement plan that KCC has, which is, very comprehensive and has further detail. And there have been, more details set out, I think, as part of the enhanced partnership areas as well. So there is more detail there. Just, forgive me that it couldn't all be in, what is a sort of 15-minute, 20-minute slide deck, but that was really as much to raise your awareness that there is this, detailed full plan out for consultation at the moment. So if you are able to, if you have the time, given your comments, I do encourage you to have a look at some of that further detail. I seem to have lost you.
You're not alone, Mark. I can hear you. I can see you move,
Oh,
but no one
right,
else
yes.
moves.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh, sorry, we're back, I think, aren't we?
Thank goodness.
Apologies, we dipped out with our Wi-Fi briefly.
Your first slide about growth of the transport system for 2016-2030, your slogan was delivering growth, failure, without gridlock, an even bigger failure. What you have succeeded in is cutting back the rural bus transport services hugely. You've increased the school transport services, the cost of that hugely. You've increased people becoming secluded and lonely because they haven't got a bus service in the rural villages. I had an elderly lady contact me because she lives in a village without a bus service. She needed to get to see her GP. GPs are a nightmare at the moment, so she had to go to the surgery. The taxi cost her £50 there and back.
Yeah.
Similar to other parts of the UK, we don't come anywhere near other parts of the UK. We have visitors to Swale, just me with my family, from Sussex, from the north of England, from London, from Surrey, and they all manage to deliver much better services all over East Sussex, West Sussex, Surrey, London, Cornwall, Kingston upon Thames. We don't come anywhere near the sort of services that they have. And they all have to work to the government budgets as well. And some of those areas are a lot bigger than Swale. And just your drop-in session for the 24th of September, there are a lot of people in my ward that would like to go to them, but they might be able to get there because there's no bus service and they're too elderly and they don't drive. So they won't be going to your drop-in session. And a little bit of feedback about your consultation from my residents is I'm not going to bother because KCC do it as a tick box exercise. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we say, they'll do what they want anyway.
Yeah, that's a shared point.
Mark, would you like to comment on that? Oh,
Not really.
You're muted.
All I'd say is if people feel they can't get to drop-in sessions, please,
Yeah.
if you know that there are people in that situation and they would want to respond, please do let them know that there's telephone number, postal address, email, etc. And we can send out copies of the plan. We can send out copies of the consultation questionnaire. They can send free-form responses on email and so on. We really don't want there to be any barriers to people being able to engage through the consultation. So if there are people in that position, do let them know as much as possible.
Yeah,
Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, Mark, I think I absolutely agree with a lot of what everyone else said about the need for improved public transport. You guys are looking to put people into public transport more, although you're reducing funding for buses and whatever, at the same time we're saying you want more buses, which is a little bit confusing. I wonder if you're aware also that a day return ticket to London on the train costs 72 quid from Sittingbourne, and obviously more from Faversham, which for a lot of people, that's not a sustainable method. You know, surely if you want to encourage this sustainable transport and people to use this public transport, you need to put some pressure on these rail companies to make these tickets affordable.
Yes, I mean on that we've said in the plan that we think that the government should take a sort of leaf out of what it has been doing recently with the bus networks, which is, of course, we've had the national £2 single fare cap. Now, I'm not saying that we think it's realistic for there to be a £2 single fare cap on National Rail, although I'd love it. I'd be up to London in an instant. But, you know, to think about similar sorts of things, as well as that, we've also, through the National Bus Strategy, KCC, other authorities across the country using the government money, have managed to do more targeted local fares initiatives. And we think there needs to be more flexibility within the rail the rail industry for operators such as Southeastern to be able to do more targeted fare promotions within Kent that are focused on, you know, opportunities for Kent. So to do, you know, they might not be necessarily sustained, but, you know, if big events are going on in Kent, for example, that there are, you know, lower fares for that weekend because, I don't know, it's Autumn Festival or something like that in a particular town. And so we've said in the plan that we think that there's lessons to be learned from some of the efforts recently over the last couple of years on the bus industry, where we've had a bit more flexibility and capping of some of the prices to get people back on that network and to explore some of the similar sorts of things for the rail network. We do think, and the plan, I think, you know, emphasises this, for the rail network, we think it's a low-hanging fruit in Kent. We're one of the authorities with, you know, one of the highest amounts of stations for an area outside of London, anywhere else in the country. So we're fairly well served in terms of stations. It's a almost entirely electrified network. So in the kind of context of reducing carbon emissions and climate change and combating that, it seems to us like a low-hanging fruit for getting people shifted, particularly for, you know, more mid-distance, longer distance journeys within the county that actually are, you know, disproportionately high in terms of carbon emissions. So we do think the rail network needs to work a lot harder, and there are straightforward things that could be done. And as I say, some of that detail is in the plan. And if you do get an opportunity to have a look at it, there might be elements in there that you really endorse, or that you think, you know, should go further still.
Councillor Bonham.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, if you could make available copies of your consultation paper ones that we could leave in our village shops and pubs, because to put a fine point on it, with no bus service, my residents now have to try and use this alternative, which requires them to book a week in advance. I think it takes about an hour to get to the local town, which is slower than walking. And it costs them nearly as much as a taxi, where they're going to be sharing a vehicle with other people. It is the most bizarre alternative service, and they can't use their bus pass. So I know that my residents are, well, there's one who's on a mission to come to your presentation, and she's told me that because she wants to make her views clear, some of which I may well have expressed. But the other thing, you talk about this sort of the last mile journey, and I think there has been incredible laziness in the UK about the last mile journey, not just walking and cycling. Europe has taken on scooters, and people will have heard me talk about this. But if KCC is so strapped for cash, it can't provide a bus service, it can't build new roads. What it should be trying to encourage the government to do is allow people to use what they have, which is either their legs or something like a motorised scooter, which the last mile or two, it's like a revolution. I was just on holiday in the south of France. And, people very rarely use their car for that last mile or two because they can get on a little electric scooter. And it's not the yobs, because the yobs in the minority, there's very few of them that use it. But we need that change of legislation. And KCC, if they haven't got the money and there's no prospect to them getting the money, should be saying to the government, let's look at some alternatives that are reasonable and practical. And that would be a reasonable and practical solution where it wouldn't actually have to build anything. It would just allow the existing population to use what it's got and maybe invest a small amount in an electric scooter. And it would go across the ages. I think it's something that's, would be transformative where we've got no bus services.
Yeah, noted. I mean, just on electric scooters, I know your point is more fundamental about last mile, and that's completely noted and understood. Just on the specifics, though, of electric scooters, as you might be aware, electric scooter trials did take place in Canterbury and Kent, and they were brought to a cessation by the Cabinet Member for Transport, the former Cabinet Member for Transport, after a safety incident, and no further trials. The council doesn't have an appetite to undertake or participate in any further trials as it stands because of safety concerns. So the current council's position on electric scooters, I think, has sort of been set out off the back of the Canterbury aspect and so on, and the experience with that.
It needs to work harder then on alternative solutions on buses then, if that's its stance.
Thank you. Last question now from Councillor Bullock.
Yeah, thanks. I was just amazed when I heard you say about the bus £2 fare, because that just underlines how gimmicky this money that coming from government really is. This money's come in. We haven't seen any of it in the rural areas to replace the lost services. The £2 cap ain't a lot of help if you haven't got a bus to catch in the first place.
Yes, exactly.
And it runs out, I think, November this year. So all those people who thought, yeah, we'll get a £2 bus, when it's up to £6 or £7 return, we're like, oh no, we're back to the car. So I really don't think spending money on these sort of gimmicks is the way to get a long-term improvement in the service. What people need are regular buses they can afford, but take them where they want to go and pick them up where they live. So I was just a bit surprised at your response to the government gimmicks. And the other thing, if you really wanted to improve congestion and wanted to improve traffic flow in the districts, you would talk to the councillors and would talk to the local people on a regular basis so that they could highlight in advance some of the problems that some of your decisions might be. Now, we proposed that last year. We've had one meeting. KCC turned up with ignorance and arrogance all over the place to say they knew best, they were doing a fine job, and they basically haven't bothered to have another meeting. We've got it later on our agenda. Now, if you're not willing to listen to if KCC isn't willing to listen to local people, local councillors who've got experience and know the areas, then how can you sit there and say you're having a consultation and say that you're interested in what we've got to say as members of the public, when you don't want to actually talk to people on an ongoing basis who might be able to flag up in advance some of the problems that you're causing? I mean, there was an instance last year where you gave permission for developers to close a road in one of our villages and diverted it. The diversion was down for a main road a main connecting road, which was closed for other road works halfway through the diversion period.
Yeah.
I was able to get on touch and say, look, you better think again. But if you're not, this is why you need to be talking to local councillors. And KCC have made it very clear they don't need to, but they are doing a blooming good job and we should be thankful to them. Which you probably can't address, but so.
That'd be the forum.
Yeah, that's
No,
coming up.
I can address that one. Are there any final comments or questions?
I think that's about it, Mark, and
Thank you very much. Just can I just ask, in respect of Councillor Bonney's suggestion about paper copies, Janet, are you okay if I liaise with you about doing that across the 4 areas?
Yes, I was going to suggest that. That's fine.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'll be in contact. Thanks, Janet.
Thanks, then.
yeah, thank you very much, Mark.
Cheers. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye bye.
Well, that was interesting. I dare say we'll get some good suggestions made at some of these drop-in centres. Well, I hope so, anyway. Okay, we're moving swiftly on to agenda item number 6, which is scrutiny of waste and street cleansing contract. I know Councillor Chris Palmer, a panel member of the Waste and Street Cleansing Contract Survey Scrutiny Review, is going to talk about the reviews taking place at this present time. Thank you.
Right, we had our previous spring collections with Biffa, and that expired in March 2024. And after a long period of tendering and going backwards and forwards, we came up with a new contract with Suez, which started, I think it was the 26th of March, was it? 25th of March this year. We did expect a few teething problems, a few minor issues. Unfortunately, they were more than a little bit minor, and more than a few teething problems, and have been ongoing. So when we had our meeting for the Environment Climate Change Committee back in July, we made a decision to put together a scrutiny panel and to do a consultation with the public and everybody about things that have worked well and things that have not gone so well. As a learning curve for the future, because obviously this contract is only 8 years old, so we need to find out where things have gone wrong with us and with Suez. We've had our first meeting just yesterday, and we looked at resources and staffing yesterday. I think that was about all we looked at, mostly staffing yesterday, levels and things. And we've got different workshops coming up over the next few months. We're going to be looking at resources and staffing is the current one. We've got data and the rounds. Data is the stuff that was sent over from Biffa to Suez. And the rounds were looked at, and some of them were changed. Some of the days were changed, and some of the rounds were changed. So we're looking at the next one. Then there's the contract and project management that we're going to be looking at, and then communications. We've got all these meetings going on every few weeks over the next couple of months, and I think it's going to be presented in November. 20th November. We will have everything put together and we'll be presenting our outcomes, hopefully, what we found. We've put together surveys, which we're hoping that as many people as possible can access. We're going to share them on social media. We're hoping that to have forms in places that people can pick up from libraries and things, that's in local shops in villages. We're going to send out forms. If people want them, they can request them for Swale and they can be sent out. It is about their experiences as a whole, so it's things that have gone well. Some people haven't had any issues at all. Some people have had a lot of issues that are still ongoing, so we want to hear both sides to get it all sort of worked out and together. The survey will close on the 2nd of October. And it's going to be presented at all the area committees across the borough. Yeah, and the final one will be presented at the Environment and Climate Change Committee on the 20th of November. Is there any questions? Yeah.
Can I ask you one?
Yes, you can, certainly.
Why did the contract end with this one?
The contract with Biffa was a 10-year contract, and we had to put it out to tender, and because over a certain amount of money has to go to tender publicly, different people can put in for it. I believe we had two bids at the beginning, and one of them pulled out towards the end of the consultation, which just left Suez.
So Biffa pulled out.
Yeah, I believe it was them.
So do you know why they pulled out?
I don't know. I don't
Does
think
anybody
it
know?
does.
Because I've heard rumours about this.
I have to be careful in a public,
Yeah.
in a public meeting, there's commercial sensitivity for those bidders that were involved. What we can say is, and in answer to your question, public regulations or public legislation says that councils and other public sectors have to regularly go out and test the market. So we had no option other than
I understand
to go out and tender.
that question.
Yeah.
I'm asking, what was the reason they pulled out?
So that would be a question for Biffa, not one
Is
that
it
I
not a
can
question
answer.
for you as a council?
I think it's every company has the choice of whether they go for council services or not. And absolutely.
Well,
every
let's get
council-
down to nuts and bolts. Were they far more expensive than the one we got now?
Don't think that was.
I don't think it got that far, did it?
They
Right.
didn't go through to the final tender position, so I
Is
can't
there any
answer that
truth?
question.
Is there any truth in the fact that they wanted to use bigger lorries? And you turned them down?
No.
They put in a bid.
No.
So the process is that there's a specification written, and then they put in a price according to the specification.
So during the tender process, we say what we
This
would
is what we
like
want.
Yeah,
as a service,
yeah.
and then it's for the companies to decide how they would deliver that service. So it's completely within the company's gift to say, we're going to use milk floats, or we're going to use large refuse trucks to do them. So yeah, I can categorically say it wasn't the council turned down a particular type of vehicle.
Then the other thing is, you as a councillor have appointed them. And when you appointed them, what guarantees did you have that they were actually going to start the job the next day correctly?
I think that's the idea of the scrutiny panel. That's what we're doing to find
Yeah, but
out.
that should have been done when you were doing the contract, not all this time later. I mean, if they can't do it, you want a company that can do it. I mean, Biffa were doing a good job.
Well,
Well, they were in general, they were doing a good job. I mean, we didn't have any trouble up this way with Biffa generally.
I think that's the same as the Suez ones. There are a large number of people within Swale that have had no issues with Suez at all. Everything has gone smoothly along. You know, my ward, we used to have terrible problems with Biffa.
All right,
So I think I don't think it matters which company. There's always going to be problems and difficulties and issues somewhere. It's a big borough, huge area to
yeah, I
cover.
understand. Yeah.
So, you know, all the problems that arose from Suez A lot of them were unexpected by them and by us. And the idea of the scrutiny is to find out why those problems weren't expected, why it went wrong, where it went wrong, what we could have done to prevent it. And hopefully, once we find out all those answers, when it comes to the next tender in 8 years' time, we'll know better what to do, where we got it wrong previously.
One of the things I've noticed is with this firm is they're using quite a few lorries with a single tip on the back. Which means when they're going up the road, they're taking an awful lot longer to do the job.
I don't know which lorries go on which routes. I don't know which ones are single
Because they're
tip.
obviously going to take twice as long to do the job.
Yeah, they do. Some of the lorries have the food pod on them at the side.
Well, we all have that, I think.
Some are narrow.
But yeah, some are smaller than others for the rural lanes and villages. And the bigger ones, I don't know which ones are.
But Chris isn't here to give answers.
Yeah.
Because we have all got serious questions. We have all got real concerns about the mess and the chaos that some of our communities have had to put up with.
Bad man.
And we want to find out, put answers to the questions that you're asking. Why did it go wrong? What could have been done better? Why has it taken so long? That's why we've got this scrutiny, so that we can get those answers.
Is there a financial penalty for them?
Yes.
There is, they are.
And are you using it?
I hope so. I have been told we are.
So in every contract that the council lets, there are, there's what we call a performance criteria. They have a certain number of things that they have to meet. And should they not deliver the service, then there are a number of mechanisms that we can use from warnings and giving them time to rectify up to financial deductions.
And what I can reassure you of is that the people that work at Swale, the officers, right down from the people that answer the phones and the emails, right the way up to the chief executive, she's also had her input. She's liaised with Chief Executive Suez. It's gone right the way from the bottom to the top.
Oh, I think that's right. I mean, we've got a
Councillors.
councillor here that's done a wonderful job for us in our area.
We've all put in hours and hours.
But I do think when the contract was set up, I think at that point should be guaranteed that they would come in and actually do what they said they would do.
Unfortunately, I think with any
And if I had a man come in and wanted to plough my field and he only did a little bit of it and went away, I wouldn't be very happy.
No,
Yeah.
but he's already done that, hasn't he? He's already scarpered, that's the
But
problem.
there's an industry standard that they have 3 months.
Yeah, with a huge contract like this, that's borough-wide, whether it's, it could be any service, nobody's going to guarantee a perfect service from day one. It's impossible to
But
guarantee.
you'll be pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Certainly weren't when it was.
Okay, can we get started?
Yeah.
Councillor Bonny,
I-
please.
You'll have heard me sort of lead on because I think Mike and I and there's some of the other, this area has been probably the worst affected in the borough with the services, or maybe not you,
No.
but I know my borough have, I don't be parochial about it. It is. It's been a real challenge and it still is a real challenge and there's going to be some changes, aren't there? Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you can.
So I know from my villages that there will be some round changes coming up because it's clear that some of the routes have not worked, they need reworking. But there will be advisory letters coming out to all those individuals, households that are affected shortly.
We pressed the print button today.
Oh, you pressed the print button, okay.
Oh dear, that's the end.
I haven't checked the letter. I hope someone has.
Too late.
Yeah. But we hope, I've had a look at those rounds, we've actually been given some of the rounds, the new round, I hadn't on the old one. And I'm hoping that the changes that we see, that those ones, when they get implemented, should solve the residual problems that are left now. I mean, I think the vast majority of my ward now has the service is working. There's still individual households who every week somewhere in some village is getting, there's some erratic collections, but so we hope with that change that's coming up in the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks, that will help resolve that.
Can I just make one suggestion?
Yeah.
When Biffa were doing the job in our area, I don't know about other areas, they started on the outside and worked back in. Which means if they did get a full lorry and they have to go and tip, they're only going to go 5 minutes down the road to start again. Whereas if you've got 4 houses up here that get left up here, they're not going to come back and pick 4 houses up. So it basically comes down to their management of the way they look at it and do it properly.
I can see Martin scribbling away notes.
To be honest,
As I say, with all the colour, I think if you start on the outside and work back into where you're tipping, you're going to save an awful lot of time and energy, and you'll be able to pick up again.
I think this is part of some of the changes that they're going to. They started off on the wrong foot. I think we can agree with that, not intentionally. And I mean, I've even spoken to some of the guys that are working for them, and I know personally, and they're just as fed up with it. Things are changing within the company and how we deal with it now. And I think I'm never optimistic about anything, but some of the changes sound good. We've had briefings, and I'm not to say confident. I'm hopeful that things are going to get better anyway. But it's a new company coming into a new area. We had teething problems, and they were worse than we thought. So we were trying to deal with it, and the staff at Swale Borough Council have been run off their feet.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
And they have made some good, we had some good results from them pressurising Suez to get the jobs done. Today, we're in Woodstock Ward, and we were very lucky. We haven't had much of a problem. One problem was in Eden Village. One block of flats out of the whole place never got emptied at all. But today, it got sorted out. Took a long time, but there was problems, but we're getting there.
Person
Yeah.
actually sorted it out.
Yeah.
Very well.
And member of the public, you had your hand up. I'll let you in before these two start again. Yeah.
It was just a query about the fact that in some places the sewage contract has worked, in others it hasn't. In the places where it worked, are they the original rounds? And the places where it hasn't worked, the new rounds?
It's hard to tell. Our daughter lives in a Homewood. Is it Homewood she was in? Yeah, and they didn't have any problems. Their day didn't change. The route was the same, and they had no problems at all for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And the last few weeks they have had problems, so it's hard to tell.
The theory behind the
It'd be
round.
interesting to find out on average across whether or not that was the case.
But there must be somebody in the company that's telling these people where to go on the rent.
I think the rounds were set up before the contract started, wasn't it?
No, so before the contract started, but certainly to put it into context, 65 to 67,000 properties in the borough. The round changes, 40,000 of those properties have changes. So it was a pretty fundamental root and branch change of the routes. And part of the reason for that was because they hadn't changed for a 10-year period. So for those that had been struggling on the rounds, what you'd had the new development over that 10-year period being added onto existing rounds, and they were getting bigger and bigger and therefore less achievable. So the principle of the change was right, but as you've heard, some of the delivery of the rounds, whether that be based on data, whether that be on changing transport conditions, we just didn't get it right in terms of those rounds, particularly on the narrow rural routes. And obviously that's this committee is clearly affected by that. And then particularly on a Friday, there were some rounds. So there's 9,000 letters being sent out, so 9,000 day changes to be implemented from the 16th of September, assuming the post is kind to me. And we believe that will get us that final percent. So 9 in 10 bins are being collected at the moment, that final 10% that we need to get to the standard of service that we expect, where, let's be clear, every property deserves to have their weekly collection of whichever material.
We're all paying, aren't we?
Yeah, that's where we're striving to. We think this reroute is going to get us that final few percentage. And then that will allow us to focus on some of the benefits of the new. So part of the contract, we asked for new and better things. So more efficient vehicles, shorter journeys, so that we can reduce the amount of diesel that we use. Better street cleansing standards. You know, we've not been able to utilise all of those benefits whilst we've been chasing our tails on the collections. And the hope is that we'll be able to get the collections over the line and start to see some of those other benefits on the contract that we've asked for over this next 8 years.
Okay, we quickly keep the questions going. Councillor Baldock, I think.
No, I've done my bit, and good. Really want to hear other people, not us councillors all the time.
Pleased about that. Councillor Hunt.
Just a few things that are surprising. I mean, these letters going out. It's the first I've heard of it is tonight. Obviously, council probably knew about them. They're going out to her residents. I know nothing about them. I can't get any updates from officers. I've been emailing general questions that have got in that's specifically to certain properties, giving addresses, and I really have to push to get any response from officers. So to hear that there is going to be changes, I was told 2 months ago that I'd be having changes to communal bin stores. Yet there's still, at this time, 8 weeks have gone by without any of the bin stores being touched. And I'm having residents constantly every week telling me, and I can't update them on anything. So it's disappointing to hear that some members are getting updates and I'm not getting anything to be able to go back to residents.
Lloyd?
Sorry?
Lloyd knew. Lloyd was in the meeting when we talked about the new what we call it.
Well, I haven't seen Lloyd. So.
Well, if you're group leader, he told you.
Well, I haven't seen them. They can't tell me if I haven't seen them. But if members are raising specific things with
members,
and we're not getting any response, how are we been able to go back? So that's just something to take back. But on that, I just hope that it's all good that the scrutiny is happening, what happened in the beginning, but there is obviously still things happening now. And I hope that as scrutiny is picking things up, anything that's being picked up is being dealt with. Because it's no good waiting until November to say, oh, we know that these things are happening, we'll start changing it. It needs to be changing now, because we shouldn't be in this position where we don't know what's going on and residents have still got issues.
I can just come on that. Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to wait till the 20th of November to see the outcome of a scrutiny panel before we implement anything. As you heard, we're launching the reroutes. I can assure you that you had representatives at the member waste working group that were told about the reroutes, and it has been in some of the daily councillor emails that have gone out. I certainly saw it in last night's around the reroute stuff. So apologies if you aren't getting specific updates, please do come to me. Everyone else has. And I know certainly I've seen over that period that we've worked on that. The communal rounds, we're focused on the 9,000, get those right first, and then we're moving on to the communal rounds. But we're in a much better position for the rest of the people in the room. Communal is flatted properties where you don't have an individual wheeled bin, you have a larger 1,100 bin, and you put your waste into a shared waste bin. We have separate collection rounds for those properties because they're much bigger, heavier bins, require a different lifting gear. So from that point of view, we're absolutely aware of the communal properties that need that. But as I say, in terms of communication, we will get those messages out to those that are impacted in as many different ways as possible. But we know there'll be a bit of fallout if you're changing again. You might not pick up the letter. We've got resources in place so that for that first 2-week cycle or 2 lots of 2-week cycle, we've got additional staff there to answer questions and queries if the bins are being missed. So
Is it just a letter?
Is it just a letter or is there a sticker going on their bin to tell them that?
Just a letter.
Councillor.
Thank you. I'm going to apologise in advance, I'm going to be fairly brutal with this. From a management consultant perspective, it's been an utter shambles from day one, or before day one, in fact, because the implementation of this whole thing should have happened before the service went live. And clearly, it's not really happened. They've not discussed issues with Biffa. You guys haven't done that properly either. Or you wouldn't still be 4 or 5 months down the line, and people that haven't had their bins emptied at all in 4 or 5 months. You know, this constantly tinkering with the routes. My concern is then, are you going to repair one area and break another area? You know, the personnel change, where lots of those sort of things happening as well. I just think that, you know, when we say, oh, it's a new contract, it's this, it's that, they're excuses. Because Suez are a waste company, they've been a waste company for decades. Swale have been collecting rubbish for decades. Put those two things together, it should be pretty seamless, you know, and as James just said there, you know, there are people in our area that where let's say largely 85, 90% of the work in, some have never seen the bin in months. So, you know, I think really you can have all the scrutiny panels you want and all the lessons learned that will be forgotten by the next contract in 8 years' time, let's be fair, because lots of people won't be there. Suez as a company need to be impressed on very, very strongly and penalised financially that they're not doing the job.
I think you find that they are being penalised now, very heavily. And the fact that, yes, they've been a waste company for quite some time. And the big changes between the two were Suez wanting to give us an improved service. And the way they went about it, obviously it didn't work as well as they wanted it to work. Introduction of computerised lists and everything else. Things get lost, things get missed. But the guys working on those trucks have suffered
I'm
as
not
well.
blaming the guys working
No.
on the trucks. This is a management problem.
And I can't say any more about that, although I do know something, but I'm not at liberty to say anything. That's come straight from the guys that work for them, and they feel better for it. James, I'm sorry, you put your hand up.
I only want to just quick come back and say,
Yeah, sorry.
on the bin stores, and it's just that the bin stores probably need attention more than some of their individual bins, because you've got sometimes 10 properties all in one store that's piling up for 8 weeks, and it's a major health hazard.
Yeah.
Rather than
About with pest control.
that's the thing, there's rats flying around that residents tell me all over the place, and
Yeah.
if the bin stores are being put on the back burner to deal with the other routes first, it's wrong, if they need to get sorted.
Just to be clear, that's not what I said.
You said the routes are going
That's
further.
what I thought you'd said.
Yeah.
You said the routes are going
I
first.
said, I said we're focusing on the 9,000 route changes. We'd already made lots of improvements to communal bin stores. I'm certainly not getting the evidence of what you're talking about through the inbox on a regular basis that we were. So we've made improvements to the communal bin stores. We're now focused on the 9,000, and then we will make a further look at the remaining communal bin stores, but it's not as big a problem as it was when we dealt with it originally.
Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I agree with something that, don't know the name, but you said something earlier, too much reliance on technology. And that's what I think they do. It's it's like the lorry driver who drives down the 6x6 road and gets stuck because he's followed his sat nav.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think
That's the whole
sometimes,
point, though. Get back to basics again.
I knew there's some sort of issue because it's the same hours was being missed, the same areas. And I think the frustration for me, it took so long, and you're right, all of a sudden you think you've sorted something out and then somebody else comes along and they've not had a connection for 3 months or 6 months. But in fairness, and I'll be fair, I think it is hard for the people on the ground,
Yeah.
because I know what it's like driving about Swale. We've built too many houses. We've got poor infrastructure, we've just said about it. We've got some major roadworks going on in Swale. The M2, Grovehurst, Key Street's always up in a block. The A2 is being dug up all over the place. We've had missed deliveries because people park on the double yellow lines at the top of the road and the van can't get round.
Yeah.
So there are lots of issues, but I'm not making excuses for Suez. I think there was a fundamental breakdown in how they did things. I think hopefully it's been addressed with them, and hopefully these changes hopefully will bring the improvement, because if it does go worse with the changes, then something seriously has to happen.
Yeah.
But you've got to imagine that it has the name Suez, and Suez and crises go together.
Councillor.
It's just a quick question. Are the clerks going to get notification of what areas are going to be changed? I know you said that the letters are going out, but if you could email us clerks, and then we can then put that out on our social media channels, so it can start, that they can start looking out for the letter, because obviously the 16th September is not very long.
Yeah, I mean, what I would suggest is that our social media will be putting out messaging around that, and probably the best way to do that is for the clerks to repost what
If
we're
we
putting.
repost it,
Yeah.
Facebook take it down.
I think we've solved that problem now. I think, no? Ah.
We should be able to send a letter to all the parish clerks. That shouldn't be a copy of a letter to the parish clerks.
Oh, a copy of the letter
Yeah.
is not a problem, but obviously not all of the individual changes. So it's not the one, because we don't operate on a ward basis, basically, or a parish basis. So rounds could start and stop on the same road, for instance. So it's not as simple as these are all the ones in your area. But certainly a copy of the letter,
It's
absolutely.
just that
Yeah,
people that
that's
are
a really
aware
good idea.
that a letter will be coming out.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have two more. One's councillor Money first, and I'll take them after that.
Yeah, so on that, because I know in the bits I've seen in my ward that are changing, sometimes it's just one street in a village. And so if you start telling everyone, they all think their bin day is changing, and actually it's not, it's just one street.
Yeah.
Because some of the rounds have been a right mess of different routes going, into and out of the same village with different days, etc. Now, that may well be the case, but for good reason, it's hopefully this time. So that's the first thing. The second thing, so I suppose there is an element of, I was, when Martin said to me, first of all, no, I can't give you a list of the addresses, and now I understand why, because if it is just one street and I alert everyone, I will give them a heads up generally that some will be changing, so not all. But I think it would be useful if the ward councillors could be aware of which ones are changing. Maybe you'd be able to strip out so that we've got some understanding. But also, because this is a tripartite agreement, so this isn't just us, it's Maidstone and it's Ashford. And all the problems have been different across the lot. And Suez have other waste contracts, they're experienced in this, they've done it elsewhere. Equally so in Biffa, and they've got two very different approaches to the way they do their waste collections, and that's probably the culmination of all of these issues. It's like it's a complete melting pot of issues of the worst type. What I can tell you is I did meet Suez, didn't I? And I gave them both barrels in my usual form. And so they were in no uncertain terms as to what we thought at Swale. But also, we as a coalition have been very clear that we want that contract to be enforced, and that every clause under it, including penalties, should be flexed to the max, so that the pain is most severe. Because I do believe that it's only financial penalties that really they take any notice of, head office, because I did threaten to go into Paris on my way to South France and go and talk to his boss. So, yeah, but I think they're under no illusions to what we think, and they know that we will use that contract. So I just want people to be assured that we're not blithely rolling over, but that the issues are a myriad of different issues. And so we'd have a problem here with something, and then it'd be completely different in Ashford, wouldn't it? And then something else similar will crop up 2 or 3 weeks later. So I think it's probably going to be many issues.
And in that meeting, they made it very clear that they want to get this right as well.
Yeah.
You know, they really want to, for their reputation.
And for us in the rural bit, the last bit I was going to say is that the bit that we felt, certainly the rural ward councillors felt important under the new contract, was about getting, you know, the clearance of rubbish, you know, the hedgerows and everything else, which under the old contract, they had, was it 28 days, 30 days or something, wasn't it? We're tighter on this contract. So hopefully when this is sorted out and the resourcing's right, we see an improvement in those bits, which is the bit I know my members and I'm quite passionate about.
That's quite reassuring because I get parishioners email me to say that this rubbish has been here for 18 months.
Yeah.
And I've reported it numerous times and I still drive past it.
Yeah.
So if we can really.
Yeah. And that's what we hope, isn't it, Martin? Over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think there's a question later on that I'm answering in the updates, but around fly tipping, or particularly that affects you guys in the rural areas. Certainly, amount of times I'm out in Upchurch or others, looking in fact on my drive out, I spotted one in one of the lay-bys, so that will be on officers' desks tomorrow morning. So from that point of view, we were really clear that the resident survey back in 2021 said, actually, we're okay with the collections, but we're really unhappy with the street cleansing side of things. And so members and the officers came together to write the specification for the tender and made it very clear that that needed to improve, and where there was very much a focus on the key routes, the high streets and others, out in the rural areas, there was a less of a focus in the last contract, and that has absolutely changed in this contract.
There's only one caveat, is residents absolutely must report a missed bin, and you've got 2 days to do it. Otherwise,
Sewers don't get.
they don't get a penalty.
Final point for me as well, I think it probably leads on quite well. Fully familiar with council tenders, although not necessarily your multi-borough tender that you've got going on here. And the fact that Swale are committed to these guys for the next 8 years, 7.5 years left. Are you, or perhaps I should rephrase that and suggest you should consider courting another firm meanwhile, so you've got a plan B?
We can feed that in. Absolutely.
I did say nobody else, but my wife.
I just wanted to finish it on a lovely positive note and compliment Suez for the work they did with the carnivals and the hot festival. The street cleansing was amazing and they're very, very prompt. And I was actually in Sittingbourne on the carnival day and the carnival literally left the high street and Suez were coming down behind. So I think, you know, let's finish off a little bit positive. They did a very good job.
Just to let people know, if that there are some hard copies of the public survey here, if you want to take them away, if you know you've got residents in your parishes that aren't online. I've only bought so many, but if you need more, let me know and I can get more out to you. But please help yourself today to the ones sitting in the favour. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we'll move on.
Chair, Janet's been in front of the VDU for 2 hours now, so we should have a 10-minute break under health and safety.
Do you wish 10-minute break?
No,
Doesn't matter, it's the health and safety of
does
staff.
Janet want a break?
That's not fair, you can't, you can't, yeah, it's not fair, because that sets a standard
It's
for
up to
other
the chair
staff.
to decide, to the chair.
There are health and safety risks, which I think we should take
We will
seriously.
have a quick break, a comfort break, 10 minutes.
Sorry,
Public forum. Are there any members of the public who would like to ask a question? Or have you had them answered already for you?
Communication.
Speak up, forever hold your peace.
Just the communication of any meetings like this for people who are not able to access the internet in any shape or form. Perhaps there could be some thought as to how else they might be informed. I'm not suggesting that you should have major mail outs, but I am suggesting that enough time should be given for notices to be put up locally. At least, because really, you've got a village hall here with 2 members of the public.
I think this links into the.
Are you a member of the public?
Sorry?
I was gonna say. I'm gonna say.
I was responding.
Carry on.
I think this links into the wider picture as well of just the lack of communication between councils, especially at Swale, and residents. We're seeing it in parishes as well. There is just, we see it in the turnout in elections now. You know, we are one of the lowest turnouts in Kent. We were in the general election, we were in the police and crime commissioner. But that is reflecting a growing gap between residents and elected people. Now, one of the things we can refer, I think that the inside Swale, we've cut that down to twice a year. Now, if that was, you know, the amount we saved on that was minimal. It was a way of getting to every house what was going on. We could be putting in, you know, 4 times a year, or 3 times a year or something, details about the area committees. Wherever, and we know in May or even earlier, the 3 dates for the year ahead, we could be putting in that inside Swale the dates and locations of all the meetings, all the area committees, so that people can say, oh, yeah, there's one in October, we can go along to that. It's, you know, it's giving people the time to prepare, also through their door, information. The less information that we give people, the less they are able to be involved. And not everybody uses the internet. Not everybody checks Swale's consultation page on a regular basis. So we do have to, you know, use what I think was our best means of communication. We need to be looking at improving it, I think. Maybe that's a recommendation we could take back. But we look at inside Swale as our best means of, or one of our better means of communicating with people.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think it's vital. I know some people would do file it in the bin, that anything political going through doors at elections or whatever. But for the majority, I think people, even if it's just to know what day your bin's been collected. So I think.
That was in that magazine, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. So I think I think that's a big mistake. I think we should be having that out, like you say, Mike, 4 times a year, and also having pictures of us so people know who we are. You know.
No, that was used to be done.
Yeah, it used to be done.
So parish councils, most parish councils got a parish magazine. We let the clerks know, they can put a notice up what most parish councils are in a village hall.
But there is a lot of problem with people.
Yeah.
They really want to get involved.
Yeah.
They'll moan and groan, but they won't get out and get involved. And that's, you know, you councillors, you're doing your bit, just turning up and doing it. But I mean, even in this village, you can have something in this village. I mean, look tonight, really. I mean, We can have a meeting, parish council have a meeting, might be just 1 or 2 people turn up. And that is the problem, it's a countrywide problem.
Yeah. Attendance at parish councils was just dropped over the last 5 years.
Sounds like, no, Janet.
I just want to come back on a point you made. Before each area committee round, I email parish councils to let them know. Hope you're nodding, so hopefully you are receiving them. So I send 2 emails out, one about a month before to say that the round is coming up. This is the date, this is the location, and I also put in there, please pass this information on to anybody who might be interested in attending. I probably can expand that and say, could you please also put notices up for people who don't have internet access? So, you know, pushing a bit more for that, but that's just one solution I know.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just on the subject of sort of local engagement and things, touching on something Mike said about Swale website. Now, as far as business engagement goes with local businesses, lots of other councils in Kent deliver lots of networking events where they host it, they get involved after the deliberation, do Maidstone. Their engagement with local businesses in all kinds of ways, rather than just doing work for the council. Those kind of business people then become more interested in local matters that go on. If you look at Swale's website, they're still advertising a networking event for businesses that was due to take place in March 2020, which obviously cancelled because of the pandemic. That's the last thing that if you Google network opportunities, you know, if you want to engage people, engage businesses, and people work in businesses.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from there, because I often go into the Swale Borough Council site and put one word in there, something I want, and you get all the archive that's in there.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I don't know how often they go and clear their archives out, but it's there. But sometimes that's handy if you're looking back at something or a meeting or the minutes of, it's there. So that's, I don't know how to get around that.
I will take that back. And
Yeah.
just
Updated.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what you have, like, people that know about SEO, search engine optimization and stuff like that, so they understand. I don't, I know the words, but it's clearly, it's about making Google recognise what's new and what's not and what's relevant. But, you know, being a local business person myself, I'm not aware of anything that's well on where I can meet other local businesses or the council in a business format. I think that would be a great way of engaging lots of local businesses.
Are you looking at Swale Means Business?
I've never even seen it come up.
Right, okay, so you've done a search, and this is what I've raised before with comms, is because the main website, and it's been a petrol thing, but if you go onto the Swale website and it says business, it takes you on a link, Swale Means Business, and it's a massive resource. And we've got a database of 3,500 businesses, and we do have events on there. We don't run lots because we haven't got a huge budget. But where there's funding opportunities or business opportunities, and there's one on there about procurement, how to get involved in procurement. So that's on there. So that search engine where it's showing up an old event, that's exactly what you explained. And that's what I've raised before with comms.
Yeah, I think this is something that we should be looking at, and I think it's something that we can go back to the service committees as a suggestion from here to have a look at that, to make it more user friendly and more relevant. And I think what we've just discussed here and the option of going back to a couple more copies of the Inside Swale, we'd cut it back. I think we should go back to it because that's one of the best options we've got, letting the public know. I mean, not everybody's going to scour the internet all the time. They're not all going to keep looking at the Swale website.
Yeah.
If they've got a magazine that's come through, and I think we should put another explanation in there about what the function is of the area committees.
I was going to say that. It
Because,
needs that explanation.
I think they've lost that as well. I mean, and this is something that I think we're going to take back and we can put forward. And thank you very much for that, because we want to get through to the public.
If you
Just want to make a recommendation about inside service, so what a wording there.
Should we cover that when we get to the matters preferred? Yeah.
on that, if I can just say, so on that Swell Means Business website,
Which I'm just looking at, and it's
Yeah.
advertising an event for breakfast networking on 30th of September 2022.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
I'll ask them to take that off. But if you sign up to the emails on that, they will send you out the regular bulletins and they'll tell you the latest events.
Thank you for the direction there.
That's all right. You didn't have to. It
Kind
should
of
be obvious.
helpful, but kind of not
Yeah.
to them anyway.
It's,
No.
yes, it's helpful to this gentleman,
Yeah.
but to everybody else in Swale who might be looking for such a thing, if they don't know it's there and it isn't coming up,
No,
then
it
it is
should
of
be.
no use whatsoever.
Yeah, it should be
Related.
in the main website. Yeah.
That was 2 years ago.
We can take that back.
Yeah, we take that back,
Yeah,
definitely.
That's the thing we're always piping on about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Communication.
Yes.
We're starting to do, a parish magazine quarterly, spring, summer, autumn and winter. So at least if we had, the dates going forward, and it might be an idea, as you've already mentioned about putting something in the newsletters, about what the area committee does, so we can then include that in our newsletters. So it's not just going on inside Swale, but also locally in the parish newsletter.
Yeah, it would be nice because we're getting fed up talking to ourselves. We really are. You know, we want more input from the general public, but as you say, a lot of them aren't interested. And that's the problem.
They're not interested, possibly because they don't know.
No, that's
If
one
they-
reason.
if they
Yes,
have the
yeah, I
information,
totally agree, yes.
then-
Right. Councillor Hunt.
I agree with everything you said about doing more. I think we should put out the magazine more. But I do just want to point out that it's members' decisions to do that. And the only reason that it's been cut and Swell Means Business isn't doing as much as what it used to do is because it's members that have cut budgets because we've had to.
Yeah.
But it needs budget to be able to do those things. And that's the only reason. So it's okay, us sitting here saying, oh, we should be increasing it. It's members that cut it in the first place. It just needs to be remembered.
Yeah, I think that was an option we had to make. You know, and it was one way of saving money, but it's to the detriment of the public, and I think the detriment to the council as well, because we're not getting the feel for what the our residents want.
It was a controversial cut.
It was, yes, and perhaps it was the wrong decision,
Yeah.
and perhaps we can find a way, but we've worded it in such a way that.
I'd like to sponsor it. Or some of it.
I suggested that, yeah.
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 Okay, well, that's lovely. Thank you very much for that, and we'll discuss that in the last item on the agenda, how we're going to word that. Moving on to agenda item 8, the Swale Local Bus Focus Group, and wait for it. Due to the general election, there hasn't been a meeting of the Swale Local Bus Focus Group since February. Does anyone have any issues they would like our representative, Councillor Baldock, to take to the next meeting?
Yeah, we don't have any services.
Yeah.
Really?
Have more meetings.
Yes.
We have more meetings than we do bus services.
Yeah.
So Councillor Baldock is here to take any questions or relating to that subject. You don't have to say anything, Mike, you just have to write it
He's
down.
nodding.
Yeah, I'm taking in.
I've already given you my involved work on the buses from Snowfields.
Yeah.
Outside a moment ago, which they do run, so we're fortunate there, but if you wanted to get a bus to the station, you can either go at 6:30 in the morning, get the milk train, or you go after sort of 8:30, 9 o'clock. There's nothing new.
And Science Park seems to have done a start with another hopper bus, haven't they?
Yeah,
We've seen a bus going up and down.
yeah, with blacked out windows. I'm sure there's nobody in there either way. That's why they blacked the windows out.
But bus services, the only way bus services work is regular,
Yeah,
and you've got to persevere with it.
yeah.
So people realise after a year, oh, that bus is running.
Once they know it's running, they might use it.
You know,
That's
and
exactly
if
so.
you do a short period and nobody's using it and shut it off, you're back to square one.
We ought to take my hometown as an example of that. Crawley always have bus services, and they're every 15 minutes. Residents didn't use their cars. It's fantastic.
You
town
have to
for
make
getting
a
round.
critical mass.
I mean, we went to Ramsgate a few years ago, and they got a wonderful round the town system. One lot of buses going one way, one lot of buses going the other way. And it was a fantastic system and people were using it. I mean, you can't do it everywhere, I understand.
Well, I'm sure Councillor Baldock will bring these matters up at the next meeting. Okay, agenda item 9, Swale Traffic Forum.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, okay. Again, due to the general election, there hasn't been a meeting of the Swale Traffic Forum since February. Does anyone have any issues they would like Councillor Richard Palmer to take to the next meeting? There you've got one.
Yes.
You get that one.
So where they close roads and they put the diversion sign up about a mile down the road, I think this happened in Bredgate, hasn't it? Or 2 miles down.
Regular.
Yeah, and then your bin doesn't get collected and
Yeah,
everything else. Yeah, yeah.
We've had it.
Yeah. Why can they get the contract, or can they have the conversation? Because the contractors have a third party, don't they? Traffic management, whatever it is. So someone needs to sit down and have a chat with these chaps who put signs out, the Herberts that put signs out too far away from where the road's closed.
And also get the diversion
But why not go back to the old system that they used to use, where the contractor is going to dig the hole and do the job, takes the signs with him, puts them out, does the job, takes the signs away.
Too easy.
Yeah.
Too much money.
And the road could be open for 2 or 3 days before the signs disappear.
And cases feeling and
Or they could get,
Church Lane in Newington was closed because of the construction going on the development at School Lane. And then KCC announced that they were going to do roadworks in Church Lane, and the road was already closed.
That's a Heineken moment, isn't it?
Chair, is there any evidence that the Swale Traffic Forum is ever going to meet again?
That's the question, isn't it?
Because the attitude of National Highways and KCC over the last one was appalling. And I attended it as well as the county were, and it was abysmal. All we got was, well, we think we're doing a jolly good job. Oh, well, you heard me earlier, that's what this meeting was like. And I have to admit, I haven't heard of any attempts to get another one. I didn't hear of one that was cancelled due to general election. I just haven't heard anything about another meeting.
Is it because they think the A249 works have finished?
No, they've solved everything. They've sorted it out amongst themselves. They don't need us. They're doing a great job.
Seems like to come in on Swanton Street and have all the rat runners off
Yeah.
the 249, who still drive as if they are driving on a dual carriageway.
Yeah.
Coming up and down a single track road, which is a C road, it's a B road.
I know. Actually, we could raise that. I'd like to raise that in there specifically because I've raised it with Larissa. Is about Swanton Street, which is this road at the end here, over there, that way. Yeah, exactly, going up to Hollingbourne. Because I think Bill, who runs the light railway, worked out that every other week they have dug the road up, something to do with water main.
Oh, the water main.
But there's a recognition that the road's going to have to be re-engineered because it's flooding some properties. The road's collapsing and the water main needs replacing, and Southern Water absolutely point blank, is it Southern Water refusing to actually give a time frame for replacing water main, but at the same time KCC keep closing it, saying they're doing pothole attacks, they're remediating potholes. There's no evidence of that, is there? Or very little.
They might fill in the odd pothole, whereas Newman and Doddington got a completely new, beautiful surface.
It's just, and it
Gregor has absolute rubbish.
And when there's a problem with the A249, everyone's, yeah, this is the rat run, and then because it's closed, it's causing massive problem around Bicknell and Worms Hill. But the residents, the real problem is the residents who live on Swanton Street can't even get an ambulance through because it's closed at various places. And this is regular, like every other week.
Well, I understand that the new water park is going to be put in from April onwards. How true that is?
No,
I don't.
Chief Exec wouldn't even commit a time frame to me.
Oh, right, okay.
When you wrote me a letter 2 months ago.
Old Bedford got quite a lot of resurfacing about 6 years.
Yeah,
ago.
we've had some resurfacing up Swanton Street lately, yes.
Yeah.
Was that
Yes.
pothole filling?
Yeah, they did
But
resurface.
But it's a real problem for our bin collections.
Yeah,
Oh, their bin collections have been totally disrupted.
Oh.
So Swanton Street is definitely one in that forum because of the impact with the issues around the A249 as well.
If four meets.
If forum ever meets.
Had to put on
Okay,
if it wasn't a rat run.
Yeah,
true.
councillor Hunt.
Just on those forums, obviously it's KCC and Highways Lass. One of the big problems with that with roadworks is the school buses. They seem to don't have enough information when it's going through. But that really is something to be looked at.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
that they're involved in.
I would have thought they were informed.
They should be, but they
They're
don't
not.
seem to be informed in enough time.
But if it's Southern Water or something like that, they can just turn up and do it, can't they?
Yeah, these are long ones that you
Yeah.
know are going to be happening, but then the bus companies don't seem to be
That's like
having that.
And
where
they
the bridge was closed,
Yeah.
isn't it? You're specifically referring to
Yeah.
that.
and their input is basically ignored anyway, just like ours. All people that pay to be done.
Councillor Palmer, you've got some questions to take away, haven't you?
Yeah, no problem.
Great stuff. Thank you very much.
Never do it again though.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 10, which is matters arising. You'll find the matters arising update report in your agenda pack. Does anyone have any questions or comments? We've got two item 5 and item 6 members here going to update you on. But anything else that there's not a lot changed in any of it at the moment, so if you're happy with the items that we've got on there, we can give an update on the littering and fly tipping.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Just an observation about, agenda, about, matters arising number 1. I seem to remember at the last meeting that we looked at these maps and they were tosh and that they were going to be redrawn and brought back to this particular route so we could look at those again.
I'm not sure if you're thinking about the one before that. They came back to the February meeting, the approved maps.
Come back to the May meeting. The February meeting was rubbish one, yeah.
I thought that they were improved, when Kieran attended in the committee room, I thought they were improved at that meeting, and it was the one before that they were bad, not so good.
On that subject, I've tried accessing what's relevant to Bobbin, and the website is absolutely useless to find out what we could possibly take on.
Yeah, you won't find it on the website. You have to contact the officers, I think, wouldn't you?
They've told us to.
Oh, good, for the website. Oh, is that the asset register?
Yeah.
Hence hoping to come here and gather some of that information that is not particularly available here as well.
I'll feed that back.
Yeah, we'll try and rectify that.
We'll try and grab that bit of land where the school sits.
Okay, I'll hand you over to Martin here to give you an update on the littering and fly tipping.
Yeah, apologies. I didn't prepare anything because I think Rich was, Councillor Lehman was going to talk on this. But in terms of that, what I can say, and I've just said to the parish clerk at the back is one of the we talked earlier about contractual penalties and various other elements that we have, and one of the when we have those, we then try to reinvest that penalties into something, another council service. And so What we've been able to do from a previous contract penalties is to recruit through Suez an additional street cleansing crew for 6 months. And they're going to follow a programme of works to try and bring some of the areas that were fed back in the waste survey as being neglected back into specification. So they will be having a focus on fly tipping, graffiti removal on our main sort of arterial routes where the mechanical sweepers can't quite get up so close to the traffic islands, digging out around the detritus where the weeds grow around the traffic islands. So we'll be coming out to ward councillors and parish councillors for exactly that, and we've already had a spoken to be able to give direct a work programme for that crew for the next 6 months. So certainly open to offers on that. And I think there's some work. My teams, the fly tipping teams and others have already been liaising with ward councillors and starting to prepare that list of work. So I think we'll be offering that out to all the area committees, or certainly all the parish councils and ward councillors, and hopefully get to see some results. We really want to document that to make sure that residents are seeing that we're getting out to some of the further reach areas.
When will that contract start?
It's being recruited now, so any time now. So yeah,
That's fine.
So who do we tell which roads we'd like added?
my team.
Husted Road.
Yeah. So
Crows Road.
what I'm happy to do is prepare an email, Janet, to go to parish clerks, ward councillors to it's fairly hot off the press. So and then we can canvass some of those.
And can you remind us who's responsible for cutting hedgerows? Because there's quite a few areas now where pavements and roadways now. I mean, I know it's coming up shortly that time of year, but they're pretty bad where you can't actually walk along some areas.
Yeah, there's not an easy answer to that because it depends on who the landowner is. But if it's public facing onto a public right of way, then it will be KCC contractors that are responsible for that cut.
Unless it's our own.
Unless it's ours, yeah, or a private landowner.
This came up at Eastern Area Committee, and somebody said there was, if you go on the KCC website, there is a tool to report hedges, and if it's not theirs, they can find out whose it is, and they will contact whoever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
And that helps us because obviously the wider hedges get, they drop more detritus, and then that creates the weeds. You know, the medium for the weeds to grow in. So
all
it
along
helps
the
from a
A2,
sweeping point of view.
literally all the way along from Tenham all the way to Faversham, you can't walk on that pavement.
That's down to farmers.
A lot of that will be farmers.
But the trouble is, there are restrictions on what time of year they can do it.
They can now, first
Yeah.
of September.
Oh, they can now.
Yeah, yes, it's
First of September to the
31st
31st
of March.
Yeah, we're past
Unless it's done in the interest of safety.
Yeah. And I would just reiterate what we said earlier, that the street cleansing contract, which is with Suez as well, has taken on board a lot of the feedback from the resident survey, so that there is a greater focus on what we call zone 4 roads, so further away from High Street being zone 1, rural roads being zone 4. So there's more of a focus both on inspection and cleansing of those.
When does that start then? So,
It's already started.
Hasn't got to you yet.
I've even reported a road and it's still not touched, so I've given up, the same as residents.
Yeah.
No point doing it.
Do you have any power as a council to instruct a farmer if he's not pushing his hedge back sensibly?
KCC do, yeah. Obviously, it's going to be it's safety reasons mainly on that.
So they have grown really well this year. haven't they?
Yeah. I've seen that, yeah.
In theory, I think they have to write to them, give them 28 days. If
Yeah.
they don't do it, KCC can do it and then bill them.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But whether they do it is another question.
You can't see the Brenchley roads. 40 haven't.
Okay, Yeah, parking, and it looks like the chair of the Community and Leisure Committee will provide a verbal update at the meeting. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean,
Councillor Palmer?
parking on double yellow lines is an offence. If you get caught, you're liable to the trouble is,
Police.
you don't see a lot. No, I mean,
Parking enforcement,
parking enforcement if there's a traffic regulation order in place. So sometimes if you feed it into the council, it might highlight where areas aren't being covered. Or where there's parking going at certain times. If you say at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's always on these double yellow lines, there's always traffic there. I mean, then they can come out and build up a picture. It is a bugbear because I get it in my road. I mean, I often think that one of the things we should be looking at is sending parking enforcement out half an hour before the bin lorry arrives. And that way, if people are parking and blocking the routes on a double yellow line, not only do they get a note, they get the ticket knowing that they're likely to fall foul that day, and that might help bin deliveries. But it is a bugbear. You know, a lot of people complain about parking outside schools. There's nothing the council can do unless there's a traffic regulation order in place, zigzag lines, and sometimes there'll be a plate on when they can do it, the times that people can't park there.
School buses.
Yeah. But
Especially Bell Road.
again, if it says no buses to park here, they're prohibited, there's a traffic regulation order, it then falls to 12 Borough Council. If there's no traffic regulation order, then there's very little that can be done.
What about if there's a double yellow line then parking on it?
They're struggling,
Then
they're
it's,
struggling.
then if it's a red
Raised
curve,
specifically about Bell Road. Simon Clark, Councillor Clark raised it as well.
Yeah.
And still,
Nothing's
nothing's
been
been.
They didn't paint them, but the ones where the buses actually park over haven't been painted again.
Because they can't,
The
because
bright buses, yeah, the buses are always on.
they can take round the buses.
Yeah.
Isn't that bus business stopping though, now Shepley's getting organised?
No.
I wouldn't hold your breath.
Right.
just slapping tickets on them all.
I don't know what other areas have, and we've got a local policeman now that does, Hartlett, Upchurch, Newington, Lower House, so our area. Because I've reported to parking enforcement endless times with no success. And I know Richard has had no success, but if you take pictures and send them to our local policeman, for some reason, they do come out when he asks them to.
Oh,
So we have had some success with our local policeman,
the
getting
jets.
parking enforcement, Jez Chisholm, getting him out, he comes out.
Oh, we've asked our
And
local policemen to
yeah.
come out where it's a move, you know, so it's a junction that's being obstructed.
Yeah, well, ours
No
is the
joy.
main
Not
road onto the
interested.
A2, and they parked on the double yellow lines, on the pavement as well. Vans, wheelchairs, pushchairs, but you can't get past. And he said that even people that are allowed to park on yellow lines, like if they're making delivery or it's an emergency vehicle, if it's parked too near the actual junction, they're not allowed to park there either. So people that say, well, I'm unloading, I'm allowed to. If it's on the junction, they can't. But he's actually, residents have sent him pictures and he's tracked the car and he's gone and knocked on the door and said, your car, shown the photo, spotted here, parked, don't do it again. If you do it again, I'll get your vehicle towed away.
Oh, I need to borrow that.
And it's still happening, but it has got better than it was 6 months ago or even a year ago. Yeah, so.
Okay,
We need.
well done.
And you turn.
Bluebell Road as well.
No. God, he needs a medal.
Right, okay, let's move on. Agenda item 11, local issues to be raised. Do members have any issues you would like to raise on behalf of local residents, stroke communities?
I do, the biggest complaint I've had from residents recently is planning enforcement, not enforcement. The second biggest complaint is parking enforcement, not enforcing. And the third biggest complaint is the police not enforcing. There seems to be a general malaise of Not important.
You get a lot of complaints, don't you?
We do. We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, you know, I
I was gonna
think
say bins for fun.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
Hopefully.
develop, you know, there's a development going on at the moment. They're doing highways work and it's been absolutely horrendous what they've done. And we had letters, emails daily, which we passed on. People were going direct to planning enforcement and really very little was done. If
Well,
anything.
nothing was done. They all got a generic email that said, we cannot act on individual incidents. Please keep a diary. Well, that
When-
was in a reply to 15 complaints about the same incident.
And that's people talk on the internet.
Yeah.
When they're getting that sort of letter, they just laugh at the council. They think the council can take it, yeah.
The problem you've got is that individuals that are supposed to be doing a job are not doing their job.
It's easier to do nothing than something.
Exactly, and it's a bit of a malaise right through the country, with businesses and everything else.
But I think that, I don't know if others have had that but this is from members of the public that they do feel, particularly when they try to contact the council, they feel they get a negative response. Or when they raise something, you know, and it's not just that, there's people going down one-way streets the wrong way. They raise the police and the police aren't interested. They say, we'll ask ACC to put a better sign up.
They've even sent photographs of vans turning into the one-way street.
So there are, I think there are issues, but the biggest complaint recently, purely because of the development there, but was planning enforcement and people, I don't know if others have had that they don't feel planning enforcement is doing their job.
Anyone else?
Well, my biggest issue, apart from bins, which has got to be number one, number two is road closures affecting businesses and residents. We've had so many, and with those signs put so far in advance, it's just been absolute misery for the last few months.
Would mine be WL9 parking outside schools,
Mm.
buses? And like that, I think I bring that on every single time.
We could refer back to the JTB. But, I mean, JTB is such a painful experience of non-achievement, but, yeah, it is the place we could place it.
Yeah, the other thing that we've seen problems with is when they've done some roadworks, they leave the diversion signs up for long periods of time.
Yeah.
Now I think that's a legal requirement to retrieve those.
That's why people ignore signs.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got diversions that go like that.
Oh, I know.
Or diversion down the one-way street.
We had one recently that said road closed and someone stuck a great big diversion sign in front of it, so people were still turning down the road that's closed.
We'll do what they do and after just drive round it anyway.
They can't,
Right,
can't be
okay.
bollards in the middle of the road
Um,
now.
The proposal to the JTB needs a proposer and a seconder.
I'll second it.
That road closure got all of junctions by parked vehicles. I think we can add to that.
Yeah.
It's JTB.
Sorry, can you say that again? I missed that.
Sorry. So it's about road closures and the obstruction of, and the signs and the poor diversions, but also parking around junctions and the obstruction caused by the parking at the junctions.
This is happening a lot at some of the schools as well. Yeah, because I've actually gone and paragraphed,
Bluebell Drive. Bluebell Drive, the roundabout.
Yeah.
Need to finish.
and it's atrocious. They just park on the bends just to get the kids, all the kids 20 yards to the school, 50 yards to the school.
The pupils are actually parking there.
We could refer that to the community safety partnership, couldn't we? Because that's police as well as.
If it's yellow lines, it's us, we can actually send people out. If
Yeah.
it's not got lines on it.
It's the police.
It's the
They
police.
don't very rarely do it.
And we're too busy.
Yeah.
Not doing what we want them to do.
All right. If it does go to the JTB, the junction, it could be recommended that the chair of JTP wants to approve.
Yeah.
Just to keep it all, did you have a vote? I think there was a vote, yeah, proposed and seconded.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you.
yeah.
Just
Unanimous.
to keep it.
Okay,
So you can write motion.
right, okay. Agenda item 12, matters to be referred to the service committee chairs for consideration. And I think we go back to that,
Yeah, the earlier one.
sorry,
Inside someone.
Inside.
yes, inside swell, that was it.
Yeah, I could think we really refer that to.
And
Would
the
it be
comms
P&R?
on the website,
Yeah.
Yeah, P&R.
and that's for the comms as well.
Yes.
Comes on website, is that something I can just feed back,
Yeah.
Yeah.
to my line manager, at the inside?
Well, I think it's also, I think it's quite strategic because it's something that we've been going on about for a while because I think it's going to require some money. Sorting out the website.
Councillor Hunt.
Okay, comms, so I'm not wrong, comms I think comes down to Larissa.
I think it's part of the P&R function too.
If it falls under Larissa and she's got budget there for comms,
That's delegated.
yeah,
Depends how much it is.
could just, can't we just go back to Larissa and say, you want to be able to do this, can it be done within the budget? And if not, needs to be referred to P&R.
Yeah.
And perhaps somebody made a suggestion about businesses to help with the funds. Perhaps get the
Well, you know who would
businesses
sponsor it, don't you?
advertise. Well, they're advertising it.
I think we've got to be careful about that. I
We've got
think
to be
that,
very careful.
Yeah.
We've had that before. And,
So
yeah.
again, we need.
but we can tackle it when
Propose
we
a
need.
secondary
Thanks.
slide on that, what were you gonna say?
Through you, Chair, it's not something I've been involved in, but certainly we can take it back, because I think, aren't we looking to develop the communications strategy and obviously website and
Yeah.
Inside Swale will be part of that.
Yeah,
I'm fairly certain that will go to policy and resources
Yeah.
for
I think so.
a discussion at some
I
point.
think we should
So I
refer
think
it
it would tie in nicely with that. Clearly, Councillor Hunt's right, if there's budget to do something straight away.
Well,
but-
yeah,
Yeah.
I think referring to P&R and as councillor Hunt is on P&R, it'd be nice to get his support and
Yeah.
we might win.
It depends. How I feel on the night.
Yeah.
Clearly.
I'm feeling miserable tonight.
Yeah, ditto.
So the recommendation is to refer Inside Swale and the communications issues to P&R.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we need a proposal second.
I was going to do, so inside Swell to P&R, but first the communications to Lewis, because it may not be budgetary. If it's budgetary, then it has to go to P&R.
So have we got a proposer for that?
Yeah.
Seconder?
Yeah.
Right, James, Mr Hunt.
Okay.
Councillor Hunt and Mr Hunt.
Over the one winner, 1927.
No, it's, I was. You keep us informed about that.
And that's voted agreed, yes?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I saw all the hands go up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Date of next meeting.
Yeah, that's my bit.
Sorry, he's actually got it.
Oh, that's the bit I was looking forward to.
Ah,
Okay. The next meeting date takes place on the 28th of November, 2024. And it's going to be in the committee room at Swale House.
we don't actually come out
Uh,
to the people for that one.
Councillor Hunt.
Can I ask, has anything been done about getting other places? It seems to be over here when we.
Yeah.
It's good to go out rather than.
Yeah, it's,
They will have Wi-Fi in Robinson by then.
Not Wi-Fi at Newington, is it?
We have now, yeah.
We've got
Have a
Wi-Fi at Malden.
Use Wi-Fi anyway.
Yeah.
it's getting Newington when it's available. I did go there to test out because there was a side room and it didn't work very well in the side room, but it's getting days available where the big
That
rooms
the
are
room
available.
in,
Yes,
yeah, that's rubbish, isn't it?
yeah, so
There is iWade, there's bobbing coming
They-
up.
they get
We're
in and
hoping.
iWade wouldn't take any bookings. I've tried booking iWade.
Really?
They wouldn't take
You
booking.
got the farm. Which will fit.
That's an idea.
Has it got,
Yeah.
has it got, again, when I've tried, it's always booked up. I'll check.
Oh, Larry, I'm busy, and I'll be very interested, obviously.
I'll try.
So they're having their own Wi-Fi put in, just ping me an email and
Okay.
I'll find out.
Auburn Pavilion.
And they've got a new side room as well.
I tried Auburn Pavilion and they wouldn't respond. I do try, I really do try.
Yes, she's very trying.
When's the next one? 28th of November?
28.
Yeah, no, the farm's booked.
Yeah.
Finish all is free.
So, councillor Hunt, can you shut up?
Wi-Fi yet.
Could not the book, could not the book have been done with a much more?
Wi-Fi at.
Oh, she's very, she says.
Okay,
Because it's a new revamped.
thank you everybody for coming and some good discussions, and I'm now going to close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.